Hello and welcome to Create Context Criterion 40. Each week we look at a different film in Criterion's 40th anniversary collection. This week we are looking at the film Tokyo Story. Tokyo Story was not a success on its initial release, especially with international audiences. The film is highly specific to Japanese culture and it's slowly paced. It's not until about halfway through the 2+ hour film that we really get a sense of what the movie's themes and messages are, what it's trying to portray to us. But just like the characters in this film, Tokyo Story has become wiser and more respected with age. Even though Tokyo Story is a very Japanese film, its themes are universal. This film is about aging, complicated family dynamics, and appreciating the time you have with someone before it's too late. These themes are all presented beautifully in the story of an old couple making a pilgrimage to see their children in the big city of Tokyo. It's slow and at times even boring, but the film asks us to sit in and appreciate these slow moments because we never know how many of these moments we have left. Tokyo Story begins with the older couple, Shukichi and Tomi, arriving at their son's house for a 2-week trip to Tokyo. Their son, Koichi, is a doctor with a wife and 2 children who all seem less than enthused about his parents' visit. Their son and daughter-in-law plan excursions and sightseeing tours for the parents that barely fit into their own busy schedules. They often act put out by the older couple's visits, even though on the surface they hide their annoyance and make pleasant small talk. Throughout the trip, the parents visit each of their children and their respective families. They also meet with Noriko, the widowed wife of their second eldest son, Shoji, who disappeared during the war. Naruko is played by Setsuko Hara, a frequent collaborator of the director Yasujiro Ozu, and she absolutely steals this film. Her performance is the cornerstone of Tokyo Story and the embodiment of the larger themes at play throughout this film. Throughout Shukichi's and Tomi's trip, none of the family members seem to have time for the older couple. Despite the couple's long journey and their ailing health, their sons and daughters spend most of the time trying to just get rid of their parents. They plan activities for them that quickly get canceled as soon as something else comes up. Their daughter even puts them in a hotel for a few days so she can host a meeting for her small business. It's only Noriko, their widowed daughter-in-law, who actually makes time for the couple. The constant plans, events, and hotel booking set up for their parents reinforce how the children view their parents. They view them as a burden and totally miss the point of their parents' visit. Shukichi and Tomi have no interest in the arts or nightlife of Tokyo. They didn't come to visit the city, they came to visit their children. Children who are too busy or too annoyed to spend time with their parents. Noriko is the only one who makes any sacrifices at all for the elderly couple, despite not being a blood relative. She takes time away from her demanding job, graciously provides Tomi with a place to sleep, and even offers her a little bit of money for her visit. There's a parable in the Bible about a widow that I feel is a direct parallel to Noriko's story in Tokyo Story. In this parable, a young widowed woman gives her last 2 coins to the church. It's a parsley amount compared to the much greater sum given by elders and the wealthier congregation members. Jesus later tells his disciples that she, in her generosity, actually gave more than all of the other rich patrons because she gave her last 2 coins. She gave all she had, while the others only gave what they didn't need. Noriko does the same. She has little but gives everything she has for her gracious in-laws, while their physician's son and business owner daughter only give what little time and effort they are willing to spare. During the parents' visit with Noriko, we learn a few things about the family and their deceased son. Shoji, their son that was lost in the war, had a little bit of a drinking problem, a problem that he inherited from his father. Noriko states that she used to hate when her husband would drink all night and come home rowdy, but now she misses it. Shukichi and Tomi, they lament with Noriko and plead with her to move on, but she doesn't. Noriko has experienced a loss, a devastating one, and she would rather care for those that are still in her life than move on to a new life. Noriko is the only person who cares for Shokichi and Tomi because She is the only one who has experienced tragedy. She understands loneliness and because of that is sympathetic to the loneliness experienced by her in-laws. She understands that they are in the city to visit their children, not to see theater shows or eat at fancy restaurants. Her empathy is brought on by tragedy and it's made her a kinder person. She's defined by her loss, but not in a negative way. It's actually a fascinating narrative twist that Ozu perfectly pulls off, and one of the reasons I believe he worked with Setsuko Hara so often. We often see loss represented narratively as a catalyst for spite or anger in film, but in Tokyo Story, the opposite is true. Noriko is a better person because of her loss. After Shukichi and Tomi return home from their Tokyo trip, Tomi becomes critically ill. The name and what her sickness is, it's never fully revealed, but she quickly slips into a coma, and the extended family all return home to visit their mother for the last time. After Tomi passes, the children all leave immediately, with only Noriko staying for an extended amount of time to assist Shukichi with this tough transition. The film ends with Shukichi alone in his home for the first time. A sense of loneliness is present on his face, and we see him begin to understand Noriko truly for the first time. Here is a girl with nothing, yet she treats this couple as if they were her own blood. Shukichi has a large family, but they are all too busy to pause their lives for his sake. The tragedy they faced, losing their mother, did not change them. But Shukichi, with his tragedy, he is changed, just as Noriko changed when she lost her husband. And rather than focusing on all of the other crazy wildness of life, they have decided to appreciate and hold dear what they have left. Tokyo Story is an incredible film that asks us to slow down. The film is paced very slow, the camera rarely moves, and there is little conflict present throughout the film. Much of the film's dialogue in the first half is just the children exchanging these forced pleasantries with their parents, but the long narrative and the slow pacing is purposeful. It feels long, but in actuality, it goes by faster than we can imagine. The film in its presentation, cinematography, and narrative style all reinforce this theme of time. We feel like we have all the time in the world, but life is shorter than we give it credit for. While we are busy with our lives and jobs, there are parents and grandparents that are getting older that won't be there forever. They understand their time is finite, and sometimes the only people who can relate are those who are painfully aware of how finite life actually is. I love Tokyo Story. This is actually my first time watching this film. I really enjoyed it, and it's probably a film that I'm going to revisit at least once a year. If you enjoyed Tokyo Story, there's some other films I would recommend checking out from Yasujiro Oza. Specifically the films he made with Setsuko Hara, the young woman who plays Noriko. These two collaborated frequently, and while Tokyo Story is their most lauded work and the one I would recommend checking out first, their other films like Late Spring, Early Summer, Late Autumn, and The End of Summer are all incredibly well-made films and share similar ideas. Essentially, just look for a film that has a season in the title, and you're going to have Yasujiro Oza and Setsuko Hara working together. Ozu uses a lot of still camera work in Tokyo Story, and that continued through his later work. It's less of a fly on the wall perspective and more a distinct choice that asks us to slow down and appreciate what is around us. Tokyo Story does this best, but his other films also do it incredibly well. Thank you guys so much for watching the Criterion 40. We will be back next week with an episode on All That Jazz, the 1979 film, and we'll be back this Friday with Weekly Movie Minute on Wolfman, the new film from Blumhouse. I'm very excited for it. On my Letterboxd, you can check out some recommendations I made for some flicks to watch before Wolfman. You can also go back and check out our Weekly Movie Minute last week on Den of Thieves 2 or our Criterion 40 last week, which was on Federico Fellini's 8.5. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're brought to you by CreateContext.com. A link is in the description. The Criterion 40 is a Create Context podcast. Head over to createcontext.com for more film, reviews, and analysis. Our theme song is Hindsight by Shiloh, provided by the Riot Games Creator Safe playlist. We drop new episodes every Tuesday at 8 a.m.